my husband and I decided to hire a lawyer to help us out with the application process. But I had two friends of mine who advised us not to hire a lawyer because it's going to be expensive. So I did the application online by myself, which was pretty cheap. So on this September 2, this is the timeline. On September 2, I submitted an online application. I went on their website, uscis.gov, and I looked for the naturalization citizenship form, which is what they call N400. And then I filled out the form, like the necessary information, my personal information, my names, address, and occupation, and stuff like that. And then I paid the amount of $725 as the fee. After I submitted the form, I also submitted documents, because in the website they will tell you what to do and what the requirements for the naturalization application. So along with the N400 that I filled out, I also submitted a copy or a picture of my husband's birth certificate, our marriage certificate, and then our passports, pictures of our passports and my green card. I also submitted documents of our tax forms. I only took a picture and uploaded it, and that's it. I did not even scan it. So yes, I was pretty impressed that USCIS was not as fuzzy about it or strict about it. So that kind of like took me about 30 minutes to complete the application process. So after that, September 2, I waited for a week. Then I got an email from the USCIS informing me that they are going to reuse my biometrics that they had already on file. So which means I don't have to go to their office to have my biometrics recorded. Some people they are asked to go to the office to take their biometrics, but in my case they just reuse the file, the biometrics, my photos that they had on file. So I was happy about that. So that was a week after I submitted the application. Then on October, around October 15, that was like a month after I submitted the application, I got an email from the USCIS that I was scheduled for an interview. So they scheduled me for the interview on December 11th. So there's like a 3 months waiting, part, which I was happy because I was able to study for the possible questions and for the possible things that I have to answer. Say for the interview lasted for around 15 minutes only. So in the interview, I'm gonna take you to the interview. What happened? So we live 3 hours away from the venue. So my husband and I drove to the venue. The time was 1:35. We arrived there around 12 because we left early. So by the time we went inside the building, they scanned our body, that machine that you can see at the airport. They make sure that you don't have firearms there or weapons that you have with you, for safety reasons. So that's what they did to us. And after we went through that machine, the officer showed up and then asked if I was ready for the interview. And I was surprised because the time for my interview was 1:35 and it was 1:10. And then he a room where the interview happened. So he showed me the chair, and then he asked me that I could put my stuff in there. But before that, he asked me to stand first to swear. He asked me to put my right hand, to raise my right hand, and then to swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. So after I swore, I took my seat, and then I was pretty nervous. It was actually, my heart was pounding, and I took a deep breath, and then the officer was kind of like noticed that I was nervous. So then he said, you know what, I interviewed a lot of people before, like doctors and engineers, and they felt nervous. So everybody felt nervous. Yes. So then he asked if I was ready to take the civics test. So I was like, yes, I'm ready. He said that he's gonna ask 10 questions, but I have to get 6 correctly. So once I was able to answer 6 questions correctly, he will stop the test. And he also told me that after that, there's gonna be a reading part of the test, and then the writing, and then the personal information. So we started from the civics tests. He asked me 6 questions, and I remember first question was, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which is Thomas Jefferson. It took me like 10 seconds to think, 5 seconds, and I was able to remember. And then he also asked me what will happen if the president and the vice president cannot, do their terms, and then who becomes the president? I said the Speaker of the House. And then he also asked, there were 13 original colonies, name 3. So I said New York, New Hampshire, and New Jersey. Then he also asked about who was the first president of the United States, and I said George Washington. Then he asked who was Susan B. Anthony, and I said she fought for women's rights. And then there's one more question he asked, who did the United States fight for during World War II? And I said Japan, Italy, and Germany. So that was like 6 questions. So he stopped the test, and he said, you passed the civics test. And I was so happy. And he said, now let's move on to the reading part of the tests. So he showed me a sentence, and then he asked me to read it, and it was so simple. It's very short. It says, who pay taxes? That's it. And then he said, you passed the reading part, and then he asked me we're gonna proceed to the writing part of the tests. And then he joked around. First he said, well, this is gonna be the longest sentence that you're gonna write, so you're gonna pay attention. I said, oh. And then he said, well, your sentence is, we pay taxes. Yeah, I was like, oh, I was trying to pay attention. It's like, okay, I'm a teacher, and I remember I give my students dictation tests. So that's how I felt. Like that, I felt like I was a student at that time. But I'm glad that the sentence was very short. And he said that's the shortest sentence I've ever given to to the applicant. Like, then I wrote the sentence, we pay taxes. I make sure that since it's writing tests, it's part of the test that to make sure that you are literate, you can write. So I make sure that I capitalize the first letter of the sentence, and I make sure that I put the proper punctuation, which is like a period at the end of the sentence. So if you are going to take the writing test, I know it's just pretty simple because it's just one simple sentence, but make sure that you capitalize the first letter of the sentence, and you make sure that you put proper punctuation. If it's a question, put a question mark. If it's a sentence, put a period at the end. So that was the writing test, and he said, well, you passed the reading and the writing part of the test. Now let's move on to the personal information. So he asked me what's my legal name, and I told him my legal name, but I forgot to mention my middle name. But then I said, well, before marriage, that was my name, and then now that I'm married, this is my name. So okay. Then he put in the middle name, which is my maiden name when I was single. And then after that, he asked me, where do I live? And I gave my address. He asked me how many children I have, and I told him how many children I have. And then stuff like that, like very basic information. Then he asked me, what do I do? What my husband does? When did we get married? So see to it that you are familiar. Of course, if your marriage is truthful, you are probably able to answer those kinds of questions, like basic questions. Where did we get married? And stuff like that. And so yeah, I am pretty lucky because the officer was kind of like friendly, and he actually shared a little bit of himself. Like he said he lived in Hawaii, and he can relate to me being a Filipino living in the North Dakota. You know, it's a cold country, stuff like that. And he also shared personal like feelings about living in North Dakota. It's an isolated place, stuff like that. So I was lucky that the officer who interviewed me was so nice. And yeah, and then he asked me to review the informations that he put in and make sure that all of them were correct. So I look at the screen, and then I accepted the information, and he asked me to put in my signature, which I did. And then he showed me another pieces of information that he put in. It's all about my personal information. He made sure that it's correct, and then I checked, they are all correct, and I put in my signature. And then after that, he asked me another series of questions. It's more on being a responsible citizen. Like he asked me if I had committed a crime before, if I had been a part of a group, or if I had served in military group, stuff like that. And all my answers were no. He also asked if I had been arrested before, and I said no. Then he asked me a question like if I had gotten a citation before, which I said yes. I got a speeding ticket before. And then he asked how much was the fine, and then I was like thinking, and then he said, was it like more than 500? And I said no, it's just only like 15 or 20 bucks. And then he asked me if did I paid all the citations that I had in the past. I said yes. And then he also asked if we paid our taxes. I said yes, we did. And then if I had owed something to the government when it comes to taxes, I said no. So those are kind of like questions related to being a responsible citizen, you know, when it comes to taxes. And then yeah, that it was quick, I think, and pretty simultaneous. Like there's a question after another question. And so there's one tip that I'd like to share with you guys if you are planning to take the US citizenship tests and the interview. So during the interview, before the interview, during the interview. Before the interview, make sure that you study for the civics tests, familiarize the vocabulary, and then when you study the civics test, make sure that you have someone who read a question to you, because if you just read it, like it's reading test, because civics test is also a test for your listening comprehension. You know, if you're not, especially if the officer speaks fast, like, and then you are nervous, so it's gonna like affect how you answered the question and how you understand the question. So when I studied the tests, I just look at the keyword. Say for example, constitution. Say for example, who and when and what, stuff like that. And I also I did not memorize everything. I just make sure that I understand the question. So yeah, that's the number one tip that I can give you. And then during the interview, my number one tip is try to make an an eye-to-eye contact to the officer, because that's how they can tell that you are telling the truth. You know, when I'm a teacher and I teach public speaking to my students, and eye-to-eye contact is very important when it comes to interview. So yes, I was also nervous during the interview, and I acknowledged my feelings. I told the officer that I was nervous, and that kind of like gave him a signal that okay, take easy on me because take easy on her because she's nervous. So I acknowledged my feelings, and he acknowledged my feelings, and he kind of like told me that, oh, I interviewed doctors and engineers before, and they are all nervous. Everybody gets nervous when during interview, so stuff like that. And yeah, I think it went well. Yes, I was nervous, and yeah, and then after the interview, I felt so relieved when the officer said you passed, and I will send you a notice in your mail and online for the schedule of your oath taking ceremony. And then I asked actually a question, because I just learned that you can, if you are lucky enough, if you pass the civics test or the interview, there's a tendency that you will be also you will take the oath taking right away. So I asked the officer if can I possibly take the oath taking today, and then the officer said, unfortunately I cannot give that to you right now because I am not officially he can't handle that because he doesn't have the authority to put me under oath for citizenship. So yes, he said it's the judge who will do that, and sometimes it's scheduled in a different place and sometimes it's not. So he said that I have to just wait for the mail for the venue and the time. So yeah, that's it. Well, thank you so much for listening to my experience. I don't know about you guys, maybe you are in the process of taking your interview or you have done it already. Whatever your experience will be, or your what your experience during when you had your interview, feel free to share it in the comment section. Maybe other people will learn from your experience. Yes. Well, good luck on your future interview and your